Hey, look, cheers.
Great to see you again, Cobb.
Awesome to see you, Seaman O'Fell.
Why don't you introduce yourself to these people, some that won't be watching, but maybe you're just listening.
Right.
And introduce them and let them know who you are.
My name's David Bruce Lee. I'm from Clearfield, Pennsylvania, where I was born and raised. Currently live in Rochester, New Hampshire, working for a company that deals with supporting the government's maintenance of the submarine fleet.
How'd you get into that?
Pure accident. So I had retired from the Navy as a Master Chief in 2006 and went to work for a company, a private company, Sonalist, in Waterford, Connecticut, and developing trainers and curriculum for the submarine fleet.
That sounds...
And did some really good work. I had an incredible group of people around me. Very fortunate to have those people right off the get-go coming out of the Navy. Chip Dye, former officer, navigator type guy, hired me. And I worked with really incredible people. Chip Dye, Bob Banker, Bill Thorne, John Demline, Leanne Marieski, Ethan Bean, Tom Malone, and the list goes.
You're a brave man. Yeah, you're trying.
I was... and Lauren Atkinson, Al Atkinson's daughter.
I met Al, the legendary Al.
He's a legend. And
I met him at the DCOM for Memphis.
Yeah. So Ron Sterling at Sonal. So we had these really good teams. Louise Entor down in Virginia Beach. And we worked, some of us worked in teams, and then we would fly down to Virginia Beach and work teams, developing curriculum for different sub-school curriculums.
So let's back up a little bit more, because that stuff is interesting, and some folks are like, okay, so what? How's that dovetail back into the data center side of what we do? And I want to connect a few dots, because for those that are listening that have met me, I've been in this space since I got out of the military, and I've been able to really just, there's no limit to what you're capable of doing in this industry. You don't even have to be the smartest, clearly, or the best, clearly. Fastest, strong. None of those things apply like normally do as you're growing up and learning new things. What is really the most beneficial to us in this space is your ability to reinvent yourself, and like how hard are you willing to work? And those are things that I learned in my used to life, right? And for those that are listening, I didn't even know your first name was David.
Yeah.
I've only known you as the Bruce Lee. You were my Chief Lee. That was the mercenary and missionary that was responsible for my career. And without you, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Take the blame for that, huh?
Listen, I have a very, not a lot of people have a list of like the heroes they grew up with and shit. I have a pretty amazing father and some brothers that are just incredibly talented. But I fell into the military backwards, right? And I mean, I knew I was going in. The way I was going in was not the way it was designed for me to go in as I enlisted. And I just kept getting lucky along the way. Like I ended up rolling into the right place, right time, right schooling, right classes, and I ended up on this submarine with this chief that was scary as fuck. And you weren't sure if he was ready to reinvent you as a human being, or like you had the right method of approach to know when to push and when to pull, so to speak. And I learned a lot, from you. I don't know if you. Right. I don't think that you probably even remembered that or accounted for that, because I was just another dopey sailor that showed up and you had to fucking babysit. But
it was. I don't even remember you coming aboard, to tell you the truth. I do remember. I was telling
some
of the
team. Yeah, I remember you're like, just go this way. I don't give a shit.
I was telling some of the team last night about I can't physically, I can't remember one particular instance where I touched you on the forehead and said, "Hey, dummy, we've got to go. You've got to don't do that anymore."
Do you remember grabbing me by the neck one time and saying, "You're coming to my house this Thursday for a home cooked like you're coming and sitting at the table like a child."
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah. Kathy and I did that a lot. My wife Kathy, we sort of treated the navigation division as part of the family. we always wanted to make sure that they had what they needed to succeed. And then Kathy loved to hear the stories of who they were, and there was Richie Kenderman and Lenny LaForest and
Reese.
Yeah, Eric Reese. Still keep in touch with Eric.
He's a stud.
Off and on. Yeah.
One of the most intense workers I've ever been around.
He's very intense, and he's just equally intense on a snowboard on the slopes. I think you remember he blew his knee out and wouldn't stop coming into work. And
no governor on him.
No governor. And there's no filter on him either. So, but he's.
I loved his passion.
Yeah, he was a very passionate. He was a good quartermaster. He knew how to navigate.
So listen. So for those listening, like you were my chief when I got to a submarine. You how many submarines were you on in your time?
7.
And you made it to which rank again?
Master Chief.
And less than 1% of the Navy makes Master Chief. The Master Chiefs control the Navy. They control 85% of the fleet.
They control the horizontal and vertical. That's for sure.
And I imagine when you guys are going, like you were, like I doubt that you were paying attention to the ripple effects of everything that you guys were just kind of blown in and out of. But
didn't have time.
Yeah, how could you? Right? You were trying to get a ship out of a ship.
Yeah.
You're trying to. I got to the Memphis when it was just getting ready to come out of dry dock. So, but that being said, I wanted to pause there because I wanted people to understand the context and how we knew each other, and whether or not people are listening. This podcast was designed to get to the fleet, so to speak, to get to the military bases, and it was designed to allow more people to understand the industry more. But at the same time, it was to highlight and give a voice to leaders. Industry leaders first and originally that can come in and talk about the evolution of our industry so that we can read the tea leaves with them and try to understand where the puck is going.
Right on.
But I've learned that there's a lot of industry leaders that are also veterans of the military. So I get to kind of, sometimes I only focus on industry veterans, and sometimes I get to focus on folks that played on both sides of the ball, and sometimes it's just the veterans. In this case, you're here because I asked you months ago to come be a part of this podcast because as I grew my career, I lean heavy on those mentors that I have that are mentoring me that don't even know it. There are people that are influencing others and don't even know it, right? And you were definitely having an impact on me that didn't know about it until later on when I'd start getting in trouble. Then you knew about it, then that's the wrong attention I was getting.
Your approach to people sometimes left a lot to be desired, Kirk. But you just don't go up and smack somebody alongside the head.
I'm learning this. I'm a victim of poor leadership, I think. Can't we agree? So my thing is this. I sat and got to watch. I had a front row seat at some of the greatest leaders. That
Sure.
You learn just as much from bad leaders as you do good ones. So it's not like everyone on that ship walked on water, but I got to see what a good leader looked like and a bad one. And that dovetails back into what I'm doing today with my own career and how that really defined the landscape of what I do. Because people ask me all the time, like no one kind of knows my story, and that's not by accident. I haven't done podcasts to talk about my deep dive yet because my shit, that soup's not done cooking. But for you, you've been on 7 boats. You've been a command master chief multiple times, a Cobb. You've got rank. There's no higher rank. I want to start at the beginning, right? So we're going to get to the good shit, and people know, like last night when you were at dinner with, a dozen of my people, you were talking, and I didn't have to solicit any of those things, but you were just like this piñata that, we kept hitting with more brown water and
And I don't know, I'll blame the Pappy Van Winkle, but
you took a dent on that
we
one
put a
last
dent
night.
in that bottle last night.
But
it was not, it was not just me, trust me, it was Anthony was in on it, and
I
but the
always
whole
use
crew.
Anthony as my excuse.
He's
for most things I do wrong.
and Sam and John,
Yeah, they're good for taking the heat.
But I'll tell you, I had a really good childhood.
You grew up in where?
Clearfield, Pennsylvania.
But that's outside. Is that more on the western
Right
or
smack
eastern?
dab in the middle of the state, Clearfield County.
Close to like Penn State?
Yeah, 60, 70 miles from Penn State. Commonwealth branch of Penn State's in Du Bois, which is 30 miles from Clearfield.
How did you, so youngest, oldest, more brothers?
Youngest, Bruce Caboose. So I'm the last of 6. There was Asbury Wright Lee IV. There was Robert E. Lee.
No
there
shit.
was William F. Lee. There was George Bartram Lee. And then there was Sister Kathy. And beautiful lady. And all the men they're just handsome studs. I don't know what happened to me. But, so Brother Barry, and they all begin with B's, Barry, Bob, Bill, Bart, and Bruce. So when I would call Dad, and I always called Dad every Sunday at like 2:00 in the afternoon, the boys had their time that they could call Dad.
Yeah, you guys
He
had
liked to talk to
signed.
the boys. Yeah, signed times.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd always call him at 2:00 on Sundays. And he'd answer the phone, "Hello, Bob." I said, "No, it's Bruce, Dad." "Oh, darn it, Barry, Bob, Bart, Bruce." And he'd go. And then we, of course, had insult to injury. We named the dog Buffy. So, another
That's a lot of work.
My brothers and sister, one brother preceded us in death, George Bartram. Bart did, passed away about a year after my dad passed away. But yeah, it was a great childhood. I was by the time I got into my childhood, I was the only one at home. All the others
were gone.
They had all moved on to their careers. And
it's a lot of extra attention.
So I had the opportunity to spend time with Dad, a lot of time with
Now,
Dad.
your dad was a World War II.
So Dad was a colonel in the 1st Armored Division, 191st Tank Battalion, a highly decorated gentleman. And he was my hero and my mentor, too.
You told me stories all about him.
We were inseparable. We had a camp out in Wolf Run, which is a little community outside of Clearfield. And we'd go out there and work on the camp. All the kids did. I mean, they were, it was part of their
like a hunting ranch or something? Or?
No, it wasn't a ranch. It was just a small camp in the middle of a tree stand with a field. And we would go out there and we'd cut the grass or we'd work on the camp and we'd just have fun, good family fun. And I learned a lot from Dad. I still have, to this day, I have the toolbox that was my father's. An old metal blue toolbox. But when I open it, I can smell Dad. I can see that the old wooden handled screwdrivers and the original rules of black electrical tape. And he was very itemized. He would put whatever screw he took off of something, he'd put in like a little plastic container with a red lid, and it was in the toolbox. I still have that toolbox.
I'm the opposite version of that. So
but now
that's cool that
I am extremely dangerous with any tool, especially power tools. My son David will tell you that for a fact. As a matter of fact, this coming weekend, he's going to be with us, and he's putting up a curtain rod because I told Kathy, I said, "You don't want me putting up that curtain rod, I'll screw it up everywhere."
What do Master Chiefs know about doing shit anymore? You're just snapping fingers.
I'm not a mechanical guy, right?
Right.
I'm not an engineer, right?
How long has it been since you had to use your hands for your job? You know what I'm saying? I mean, like you were 26 years and 10 months active duty. You said
26 years, 10 months, yeah.
How long did it take to make chief?
I made chief in 8 years. Yeah.
Jeez. So listen,
I was a rate grabber.
That's bananas. So hold on.
So I came in the Navy.
Hold on. No, you also went to so I know you and your old man were very close, and I know that he had a profound impact on you because I know that when I would, be serving with you, you would share stories. You were the diving officer of the watch sometimes, right? So you would sit down and you would share shit and tell us things, and we learned a lot from that. For some reason, I thought your dad was did he work for Patton? Was he battlefield commissioned?
No, he wasn't battlefield commissioned.
I thought he was for some reason.
He earned his commission as a first lieutenant while he was going to the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School of Business. He was a banker, but then was stationed in Kentucky.
How long was he in for if he was a colonel then?
I want to say he was probably 14, 15 years.
Gotcha.
So there's some nuance there too. So he was first lieutenant down in Kentucky. War breaks out. And he's charged with taking a motorcade of armored vehicles up to, I think, New York Harbor, Philadelphia Harbor.
Yeah, to get on the boats and ship.
And load them up, and then made the trip up to Halifax. And he was in Halifax when the ammo ship blew up.
Oh, really?
That's an interesting story if you ever read it. And then
I've heard
convoys left Halifax, went out, and as they left Halifax and started across the North Atlantic, the German U-boats,
the Wolfpacks,
were waiting, and they were picking the ships off.
Yeah.
And Dad said, you see a ship get hit, and they were running dark, and darkened ship. The U-boats would track them during the day, and then at night, and hunt them at night. So, hence the term Wolfpack. So amazing stories of Dad landing in North Africa. They went ashore in Oran, North Africa, and fought across North Africa, where Dad earned a Silver Star. The exact details of that I'm not going to get into, but it was a pretty...
They don't give those away.
No, it was a pretty intense firefight and tank battle. He saved a couple lives. And,
sure.
The man was... I never saw Dad get upset. I never saw him raise his voice. I never saw him get angry.
Interesting.
And what I learned from Dad growing up, a lot of spending all that time with him, was how important it is to treat other people, right? There are people's success. Your success is my success, right? Dad used to tell me, you can't think about the things you haven't done, but build on what you know and do what you can. So don't waste your energy.
How did you listen? Because I got a good gazillion questions. Because when I knew you last time I saw you, you were in khakis, and I didn't have the privilege of asking you a lot of questions. And by the way, before you could
ask me questions.
I think
were you just too afraid to approach me?
You were.
It's not that intimidating.
Was there a chief other than Ace Tufu bigger than you on that ship at that time? That people with Cliff Acres could fuck your life up when you're nothing like me.
Ace Tufu was a mentor to me. That guy.
He was like a chief of his tribe or something.
Yeah, he was a Samoan. He is a Samoan. I'm on Facebook with him and LinkedIn, and I don't talk to him, but
he was the cop.
Impressive. He was impressive. He was the cop. Yeah, he was the cop on Omaha, I think, and then came to the Memphis when the cob that was there when I got there, Ron O'Donnell, I think, retired.
It was interesting because I kind of got the sense that he was just counting the days to his retirement when I was there, right? Because
who, Ace?
Yeah, he was pretty chill, right?
Yeah, he was a good cop.
Oh, I had no problem at all with him.
And we had guys like Bob Boyd and Gordy Weaver, Mike Luther.
Yeah, Master Chief Luther.
But there was and Chevy Brown. But
he hated me.
Well, hate's a strong word, but there was a lot of synergy in that Chief's quarters. There was good and bad, and I won't say who was the bad and I won't say who was the good, but we all worked together to a common goal, and that was to train that submarine crew to come out overall and not get us killed, right? In which you could have some fatal failure coming out of a shipyard period.
Doesn't take much.
But you got to be trained, right? Remember all the practice we did? The trainers, the damage control trainers, and then those
remember it all.
span trainers. You'd go down to the simulated piloting and navigation trainers, and I'd drag you guys down to Groton, and I'd ram it into your head, try to get it through your gray matter of why is it important to do what we're doing and do it right the first time.
Training was I learned so much about the emphasis that was placed on training from that, right? But first and foremost, this is for your old man.
For my dad.
Right.
To the colonel. Oh, that's dangerous. Oh, that's good.
So I know that you said you don't like tequila.
I don't like tequila.
But that doesn't really drink like tequila.
That's particularly good. It almost drinks like a rum.
But I felt like if we were going to try that for the first time, you couldn't do it after you drink Pappy. It has to be first.
No.
So, but I need sea stories before we crack that bottle. So,
right.
So you got into the Navy, and the genesis of this podcast is I'm explaining how, like you, my father has had a profound impact on me. He was E1. He turned 18 in Vietnam, I think, loading bombs on that force.
Right.
Retired as a lieutenant colonel, and my brothers, every man in my lineage is military. But when I got to the military, I was looking for what I have grown up with, which was leadership that radiated. And you can tell because you have certain people in khakis that could create an orbit around themselves. And I remember getting to the boat, and that was one of the cool things about being on a submarine is like sometimes I could get great advice from people that weren't my chiefs or, different departments, and like not as much on the department head level, but like it seemed like on the enlisted side, they all gave a fuck about everybody, right? So you could get, I had great coaching and mentorship from, he probably wouldn't remember me, but Master Chief Luther a few times would sit down and talk to me about things, and I'd be like, man, this is a privilege.
He's a good boy. He's a great man. Yep.
Well, he was also like just a very intentional and very deliberate person, and that's how you become a Master Chief, I'm guessing. But he was everything that I expected, right? And there were some that were and some that weren't, and you could kind of see the insecurities in some of those. But when you got into the Navy, I want to hear about like what was the genesis of why, when your dad was Army, why did you go Navy? Did you have any other brothers that were military or sisters? Sure. And then like, who was your Chief Lee? Who was your? I had a Chief Lee. You're sitting right here, right now. I never thought when you met me, I probably was insignificant enough for whatever, and I never thought in a million years I'd be sitting across the table from you now. But I've taken so much away from you that last night, as you're talking to my team, they all like in formation look over because of what's falling out of your mouth are things that fall out of my mouth, and I'm like, now you understand where I get it. So
it was an honor to do that last night. Yeah, when I started speaking to your team last night, I didn't have any particular trend of thought. I was just,
but you taught me that
radiating, and
it's your passion.
But I am passionate about what I've done. I'm passionate about leadership. I'm passionate about mentorship, and I'm certainly intrigued and impressed with what you've put together out here with Overwatch and the team that you've built. You should be very proud, and rightfully so. The team is. It takes a tribe to make a team, and I thank you for letting me talk to the team last night. But
that was priceless. You kidding me? I didn't even have to ask.
Anyways, yeah, I have a tendency to do that.
It's a Master Chief thing.
Dad, you're talking too much. So
no, it's fucking awesome, man. Listen, my team needed that, and they loved it, and it's super exciting. I mean, I'm inspired, and when you do that, it's infectious to me. So
I'm sitting there looking at those guys. You got retired Marines. You've got some pretty key people in the CFO, Army officers,
Navy officers,
Navy, and the finance team, the recruiting team, the girls that help you with keeping you on track and running the show. I mean, it really is a cohesive unit, and that's important. And you need to keep that intact, right? No matter what you do going forward, you need to keep that team intact. So, what drove me to go to the Navy? Well, I think part of it was academics. I wasn't doing too good in college, and I needed to find a purpose. I knew I was on a path of self-destruction. I needed to figure out how to get myself better. And I talked to Dad, and he said, "Have you thought about going into the military? Go down and talk to Dave Boyce." Dave was a Master Chief Boiler Tech, and actually enlisted a bunch of the guys and girls that I grew up with, the Chapel Gang.
Was he retired or something?
He was a recruiter.
So he
was a Navy recruiter in Du Bois at the time. So, but he lived in the neighborhood. He lived right around the corner from where we would hang out. Where we hung out in Clearfield was an old chapel, and we were called the Chapel Gang. And there was, 10, 11, 12 of us. And we still to this day get together.
And he recruited most of you?
Well, he recruited 4 or 5 of us, yeah. Donna Butler.
Everyone in the Navy?
Dean Aldemus, BJ, Brad Bumgardner, myself. I'm probably forgetting a few somewhere along the line. I think Dean's brother, Joe, went in the Navy. He was a yeoman, I believe. Yeah, we BJ was in nuke power. Dean was nuke power. BJ was on submarines. Dean was on surface ships. Greg Bowe Sr., Bo, went in. He was a operations specialist, a lot like what a quartermaster is. So I did. I went in and talked to Boise, and he said, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. I want to be on a big ship. I want to navigate a big ship, Dave.
Why didn't you go like surface pukes and all that stuff? How did you get on a submarine?
I didn't. Well, okay. So bear with me for a minute. So took the ASVAB, didn't score very high in the ASVAB. Again, academics comes back to bite me in the ass, and I just didn't apply myself.
How old were you?
I was not a good mathematician. I was good in English. I was good in history. I was good in geometry. Ironically, that's what navigation is. It's geometry, right? But so finally we figure out that, okay, you're going to go be a quartermaster. Dave said, you're going to be designated.
And he told you to go quartermaster?
Something before you go. You're not going in as a non-designated seaman recruit. Not happening. So went to MEPS in Pittsburgh. I ended up down in Orlando in boot camp. I came out of boot camp. Yeah, it was like going to a spa. Boot camp in Orlando. Come on, are you kidding me?
That's crazy.
I could have gone to Great Lakes, but I didn't.
That's your only option.
With the luck of the draw, I guess, to get down to Orlando, right? But it was a boot camp. You know, it taught you the P's and Q's of being a sailor. But to me, it came a little easy because I think I was a little older than most of the guys.
What were
that
you,
were in my
18,
company.
19, 20?
No, I was 20, 21.
So you're already
20.
able to drink in your Navy. I got you.
So made it through boot camp, lickety split. Walked across Grinder to Naval Training Center, Orlando, went to Quartermaster A School. And I became friends with a fine gentleman who eventually became a commander in the Navy, Tom Shear from Traverse City, Michigan. And we hit it right off. We were like
Pennsylvania, Michigan guy, or just good friends?
No, we've clicked. I mean, our personalities, we like the same things. We like to get out and have fun. And we, for whatever reason, we were like the popular guys inside of the barracks. You know, everybody wanted to hang. Anyways, one day in class, Tom was sitting next to me, and as the story goes, and he may not remember it this way, but I sure as hell remember it, that we had two instructors. Chief Loveday, I think, is Chief Love, and then Chief Petty Officer Fuller. One was a Coast Guard, and the other one was submarine quartermaster off the Grayback,
which is like
the diesel boat.
Oh, wow!
Right. So, I think Fuller turned around one day in front of the classroom and said, "Who wants to go into the submarine fleet?" And honest to God, I don't remember raising my hand, but I think Tom probably took my arm and put it up in the air. And I looked over, and he has his hand up in the air too, and he goes, "Okay, you two guys come with me."
Interesting.
So we went out and talked to, I don't know if it was a psychologist or whatever, a couple days later.
Makes sense. Are you guys crazy?
Are you guys nuts? Do you have a love of your mother? Do you have, so forth and so on. Just stupid. So are you claustrophobic?
Oh, for sure.
So soon after that, we were on our way to Groton, Connecticut for submarine quartermaster school and sub school.
How long was all that stuff?
Well, at the time, I mean, it was, I think we were probably in Groton for about 12 weeks.
And then
10 weeks, maybe.
And then where did you go?
So sub school itself was like 6 weeks long. And you learned every hull mechanical and electrical system plus primary, secondary plant. And just the basics, the electric plant. And so we continued our friendship all the way. Tom got orders to the USS Philadelphia, SSN 691, and then I got orders. Not 691, USS Philadelphia, whatever whole number it was.
Was it a 688 class?
Yeah, 688. I got them all confused at this point. And then I got orders to the USS James Monroe.
What is that?
It's a boomer, some submarine missile.
So you were a boomer guy too?
I was a boomer guy, yeah. And so I found
Was that cool?
Oh, it was awesome. That was one of the best boats I've ever been on.
Hold on, but your first boat was a boomer out of what, Kings Bay?
Nope. It was the crew's home port was Charleston, South Carolina, but the boat was in Holy Loch, Scotland.
Shut up.
So yeah,
that'd have been the best boat ever.
So we would have to pack up these cruise boxes every other patrol cycle, fly them over to Holy Loch. The crew would fly over to Holy Loch, and then we would unload the cruise boxes, swap out with the blue crew. I was on the gold crew. Gold crew loads up. The blue crew would load up the cruise boxes, put them back on an airplane, and they would fly home. And then we'd go through a 30-day refit period, and then we'd get underway. And it was, you'd go out and you just disappear.
But every time they would pop back up, it'd go right back to Holy Loch? It wouldn't go back to Charleston?
Not always. I mean, sometimes it would have to go back to Charleston because it had to go down to the undersea range to shoot torpedo certifications.
Is there are there submarines in Charleston now?
No.
Okay.
There is a nuke training platform. Prototype there, which my nephew's son, Hunter, is going through right now as a nuke, doing quite well from what I understand. So, the Charleston base shut down years and years ago.
Such an awesome town, though.
Oh, it is. Beautiful town. So by the time I got onto the James Monroe, Kathy and I had gotten married in 1981. Shoot me, Kathy, if I'm wrong, but yeah. So here we are 43 years later, still loving each other and digging every minute of it.
That's pretty amazing, man.
So James Monroe was my first boat. I'm Seaman Lee, screaming Seaman Lee on the James Monroe. Really learned how to navigate. And
you guys didn't have all the technology back then. You guys had
at the time, I had a chief petty officer by the name of David Weiss. And David was my chief Lee.
Was he good? Oh, okay.
He was very good. He wasn't a screamer. He was a very gentleman, very Christian man. And I learned he was a fast attack sailor all of his years before. He had been on
637.
He had been on Seawolf. He had been on some other spec op boats.
Oh, wow.
Not the current SSN 21 Seawolf. He was on Parchie. He took me under his wing, mentored me through my first 4 years in the Boomer Navy, and taught me the ropes. And I put him on a pedestal because he cared, and that's where the paths of my father and David Weiss intersect. Because what I learned from Dad growing up was it's about how you treat people, right? It's not by blunt force. It is by you don't demand respect, you earn it. But you better treat people the way you want to be treated.
Sure.
Right? And Dad was a very loving father, pillar of the community, a very Christian man, lay leader of the Methodist Church, just such a huge figure in my life. Mm-hmm. Well, David was that chief petty officer.
Sure.
That was my mentor. Well, then after James Monroe, I took orders to the USS Chicago.
Oh, okay.
SSN 721.
Where was that out of?
Thames boat.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He was a cob on
Can you believe that? What's the chances that
I know,
you're
right?
a plank owner on the Chicago and he was a cob on?
Yeah, 6 degrees of separation, right? And I forgot to tell him that when I initially hooked up with him on LinkedIn after watching his podcast here a couple weeks ago. I said, hey, by the way, I forgot to tell you I'm a plank owner on Chicago, and Kathy and I are going to the decommissioning in July, so I hope to meet you out there. And he's like, holy crap.
Where's the decom?
Puget.
Okay.
It's out at the Maritime Museum in Puget, Bremerton. So when I got to the Chicago, SSN 721, it was being built. It had just been launched. Matter of fact, the day I checked in.
Where was it at?
Newport News. It was a Newport News boat. It had just gone down the ways. They had just launched it. But I will never, ever have the privilege of serving with the Chiefs quarters like that again. They were awesome. And the crew was awesome. And when you go to a new a new construction submarine, they're picking the best of the best. And I felt fortunate to be asked to take orders. I was supposed to go. So it's a tight community, right? I originally had orders to go to, I want to say, the Hammerhead. And there's another gentleman whose name will come up later in the podcast, I'm sure, Buster Parker, who was also quartermaster, was supposed to go to another boat. And when I turned orders down to the Hammerhead to go to the Chicago, Buster ended up taking orders to go to the Hammerhead. And our paths crossed again years later, as in just this past couple years, where he married a former shipmate's ex-wife, Beverly, and she's a nurse, traveling nurse, and lived with us for several months while she worked at Portsmouth Hospital in New Hampshire. And Buster and I started talking and realized, holy crap, he ended up getting orders to, I want to say, the Hammerhead.
You took your
because I took my orders to the Chicago.
Gotcha.
So
small world.
6 degrees of separation, as I say. Well, anyways, I had the fortunate time on Chicago for 3 years to serve with people like Mike Kranick and Mike Spies, Bob Signs.
What were the things that you were learning at each one of these commands? Like in the first one, what was the, I forget his name, Weiss? Is that
Weiss? Yeah, David Weiss.
So what did he, I know the things that I learned from you that I could codify with words, right? So were there things that you knew that you were collecting at that time?
I don't think you realize it. You know, there were some moments that were penetrable into my mind, into my gray matter, that I specifically remember I shouldn't have done that. Or I want to make sure I do that again because it was the right thing, correct thing to do. And we had a really big success for whatever. Now, I'm talking in generalities here, right? Sure. Well, when I got to Chicago, I had the great fortune of working with Bob Science, Senior Chief Science. Bigger than life. And Bert Hoyt, the Cobb.
Were you
turns out to be his brother-in-law. Huh? I was
senior NCO probably?
I was first class by that time. Okay. I had made second class, and I made first, and then I made chief later on. But
you make chief in Chicago?
No, I made chief on Rickover.
Oh, wow.
So, again, another
Did you have any shore duties then? You went from C duty to C duty?
C duty to C duty, yeah, back-to-back C duties.
Why was that?
By choice.
Okay. You just enjoyed being a C, you wanted to be a sailor.
Yeah. Being on once I got a taste of fast attack submarine life, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Interesting.
I didn't want to go back to a boomer. Cadillacs, man, those things were beautiful. But fast attacks they were small, they were fast, they were maneuverable.
Tighter crew.
Tighter crew, definitely, because it's only one crew.
Yeah.
And I took a lot of crap for wearing a boomer pin, the strategigic patrol pin, as we called it, the strategic detergent patrol pin, because all you're basically doing when you're underway is clean. Yeah. It took a lot to keep those old girls clean, a lot of hydraulic leaks and stuff. But
really?
Yeah. But I had Bob Signs to this day. He and I keep in touch. He and Carol, his wife, have been up to the house in New Hampshire to visit. They live out in Arizona now. They had lived here in Texas until not too long ago. But just the way Bob navigated and the way Bob spoke and the respect that he had from the crew, he was a big man. But he was spot on. And you didn't cross his path.
Did you have, along the way, these first two subs, did you have anybody that... what made you want to stay in? Like, was there...
I think I had found my niche. I had found where I wanted to be. Dad was very proud of me. The family was very proud of me. And Kathy liked it. She was a wonderful Navy wife. There is a lot to be said who has the toughest job in the Navy, and it's not the sailor.
The spouse.
It's the spouse. It's the wife. She raised 3 kids.
Sure.
Without any of my help. And it was, I did what I could do whenever I was there and in port. But,
did you even like get in the way?
Yeah.
Fuck up her routines?
We had a lot of fun when I was on the James Monroe. We had a very dedicated schedule, I knew when I was going to be in port. I knew when I was going to be at sea. Kathy knew when I was going to be at sea.
Makes it easier.
When I was going to be at port. So, and we didn't have children at the time, right? But what we would, the fun we had over in the Isle Palms in Charleston, going to the beach. We'd go to the beach early in the morning during off crew. We'd go to the beach early in the morning and spend all day on the beach. Go to the Windjammer, the bar right there behind the beach, and golden tans, beautiful. And we had fun. We were, a little 2-bedroom apartment in Goose Creek, South Carolina. Young newlyweds, not much furniture, but a whole lot of love and a whole lot of fun. And
a cool job on a boat.
Yeah.
And you were on your second boat by then, it sounds like, and you were making your way.
Well, that was on the James Monroe days, but we solidified our place in the Navy by the end of the first tour. We knew.
So you knew.
We knew where we were going next, and that was always the discussion. When it came time for orders, where are we going next? Where do you want to go?
Is that exciting?
Yeah, it was always.
Did you guys want to send the East Coast?
Yeah, I think we had pretty much decided that we're going to stay East Coast, unless the opportunity came along to go to Pearl. But our thought was, once you get to Pearl, like Tim Kearns did,
you don't want to leave.
Yeah, he was there.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the sailors that I know did that. They went out there and spent a lot of time. Cheers. Salute to the Pappy. So
does it make it smoother than that?
No, it doesn't get any better than that. So the Chicago days went by in a blur, but being on the Newcon boat, taking it out on sea trials, having a couple scary experiences. We had a 3-inch launcher accident where we vented inboard a pyro, caused a lot of water to come in through the 3-inch launcher and a lot of smoke. That was exciting. There's a funny story with that. Mike Kranick, one of my best friends, and we were going to get together into decommissioning in a couple months, was our racks were together, our bunks were in aft cruise berthing just forward of where the 3-inch launcher was. And we had just come off watch. During sea trials, you worked a different cycle. You run on and off. You're constantly changing, making sure people got rest. You had people on the sound-powered phones doing leak checks and making sure everything was fine, and following the test plan for underway test trials.
Did that when we did the Memphis out of sea trials.
Right. Same thing.
I did it.
Remember Mike Luther being up on in the con with the headset? He was the trial coordinator. He ran the tempo of the trials. Well, we did the same thing on Chicago, right? Anyways, Mike and I were getting ready to bunk down. And you had these pegs where you hung up your pants, your poopy suits or whatever. At the time, we were wearing dungarees. And I want to say Admiral DeMars was on the boat at the time for the sea trials. He was basically 08, NAVSEA 08. He was reactors. Mm-hmm. He was the guy. And so the crew was all spiffied up. The boat was spiffied up. We were looking sharp. And Mike and I got in our bunks, and we hear the boom of the 3-inch launcher thud, and then we hear Senior Chief Vanderhoof coming out of the 3-inch launcher space going, "Oh, that smarts, that hurts." And then what it was, he was getting hit with hot water from the pyro coming in through the 3-inch launcher. There was a good volume of water because what had happened is the pyro activated inside. And I'm pretty sure Bob Sines will correct me whenever he talks to me the next time, but I may have some of this wrong. But it caused green, I think it was a green pyro, caused the green smoke to come in, and it actually blew the seals out of the 3-inch launcher, so water and smoke was venting inboard. So
interesting.
The boat's now starting to go up. But anyways, Mike and I are trying to get dressed, now we're putting on our emergency air breathing mask, and the boat's on an angle, and I realize at some point that
pants.
I can't get my pants on up above my knees, my thighs, because Mike's a little bit smaller than me, right? And he looks at me, and I look at him, and he has my pants, and they're like halfway up around his chest. You got my pants, man. So,
in the middle of a
casualty. Yeah. So we both of us went our separate directions coming off that casualty. I went up to the control room, and I think he went in towards the mess decks or maybe radio. But yeah, those kinds of things happen all the time. Not all the time, but they happen. And when they happen, that training that we just talked about that I tried to ram in through your guy's head, why was it important to go train and train and train?
Sure.
Train until you puke and then train some more, right?
Which I'm a big fan of today.
Was because you never know what's
saves lives, right? When you did you ever do shore duty?
I did. So after the Chicago, I went to the Rickover.
That's not
709, and Rickover was a hot runner. I'm trying to explain a hot runner to Mac last night. Yeah, and he goes, "What's a hot runner?" I said, "You are." I said, "You are a Marine, aren't you?" He says, I said, "It's a really, really close, cohesive crew that drives that warship. Makes that warship a weapon." And Rickover was that. She was a spec op boat. I mean, she did some really cool stuff. And I was another fantastic crew.
What was it stationed out of?
Norfolk.
Okay.
And I had
what rank were you?
So I was first class.
And you made chief on
soon after that, I made chief.
They let you stay there when you make chief, or they make you?
Yep.
Oh, I thought they made you leave.
No, I stayed there. I stayed there for 3 deployments.
Like what kind? Like med runs or
one med run, which I won't get into.
Oh yeah, okay.
There's some stuff
because it was a Rickover. Got it.
And then some what we called Western Atlantic deployments, which I won't talk about either. So,
okay.
But
gotcha.
we did some really good
cool stuff
that really impacted national security. I mean, it was front up why the fast attack submarines are out there doing what they do, right?
Which was your favorite boat? Was it the Rickover? Or was the one that you were you've been on 7 boats, right?
Well, so I'm kind of biased.
Because you were a cab on that.
Because I was chief of the boat on Albuquerque. And it's good to be king.
Yeah.
That was the pinnacle of my career, right?
The Cobb.
Being the Cobb. The 3.5 years that I was Cobb on that boat, best 3.5 years of my life.
Hardest? Ensemblist?
No stretch of the imagination, the hardest. Humbling, very humbling. But I had to think about the crew. The chief of the boat is in charge of, the health and welfare of the ship's crew, not just the enlisted men, but the officers as well. So there's a triumvirate on the boat. There's the CO, the commanding officer. There's the executive officer, XO, and there's the chief of the boat, the Cobb. And those three, along with the department chiefs, run that boat. They set the tempo, they set the schedule, but you got to understand the tools in your toolbox. And those were the sailors, right? True, some of it was the skills that I had garnered all the way up through it as a leader, but I had a particular way of knowing a sailor that could do the job that I needed him to do, even if he didn't know he was going to be the guy. He may have thought, I don't have the skill set to go do what the Cobb's asked me to do. Yeah, you do. And I'm going to put you with a mentor. I'm going to put you with a chief. I'm going to put you with an officer, and you guys are going to figure it out. But I know you can do this, right? So you empower, when you want to empower a sailor to go do something like that, and it turns out really, really well. And remember, you got a chance to do some course correction on the way. If it looks like it's going south, you can change it, right, to make it better. That made a hell of a difference on that boat across the board in every department, every division. The chiefs on that boat were the best.
What do you think, what made them the best? What allowed them to be able to be the best?
I think it was the common knowledge of what we wanted to get done. We would meet as the chief's quarters, and we'd have these talks. Where do we want to go? What do we want to get done? How do we want to accomplish it? And I had guys like Tom Higgins, Senior Chief Higgins, who I trained as the chief of the boat. And he went to the Minneapolis St. Paul and unfortunately was killed underway. Got washed overboard during an underway. But he was my navigation operations department senior chief. I had Mark Kerr, Master Chief Kerr, my EDMC, Engineering Department Master Chief. One of the best human beings on the face of the planet. Salt of the earth. And then his relief, Bill Fowler, same way. I had some the torpedoman chiefs. I had just the weapons department.
So you had
Pete
great,
Wrestler.
but
Just
if
really
you have
cool
these
stuff.
great subject matter experts, what made them feel safe or comfortable to go do the things that allowed them to be great? Is it they had the Cobb block and tackle for me, the CO or the XO had trust in them?
It's a culmination of their experiences leading up to being on the boat, getting to the boat. When you take a boat into overhaul, you're going to rip that boat apart. You're going to take it down to bare deck. The equipment's coming off, and you're going to have to keep the crew trained. Again, what goes back to training, right? So the chief petty officers and the senior enlisted guys that were sent, and they were the senior enlisted folks, even the junior guys coming in, some of the best. They took the orders because I think they knew it was going to be difficult, and they wanted that challenge. But once you start you become a cohesive team, and you start putting it together and figuring out what you got and how good you have it. Now that just portends more. You just roll it forward. You just keep it going. Right? And we had some setbacks. We had some problems. We had to figure out what not to do. We had two very good commanding officers, Jerry Burroughs, Admiral Burroughs, and now Admiral Stuart Munch, who's Sincus Navier, basically forces Europe and Africa and joint forces in Naples. And they had a good wardroom, like guys like Mason Ward, who on Memphis with us, right? His caliber of officer, his caliber
he was
of human
fantastic.
being, were with us on the Albuquerque. And then while we're in the yards, of course, 9/11 occurs. And that changed the entire world. Right?
What was it like being what rank were you? You were the cobb during September 11th?
Yeah. So
interesting.
So prior to getting to the cobb, so you go back to, did I ever go to shore duty? Yeah, I did. So I left Rickover.
Hold on, you did 3 straight sea duties.
Right. So let's walk this back. So I went 3 straight sea duties, and then I went to sub school, and I taught sub school.
You did?
Yeah.
So you were a chief at sub school when your first shore duty? That must have fucking been horrible to be a sub school student under you.
Well, no,
your first shore duty?
I was teaching quartermaster school.
Oh, I got
quartermaster basic.
Okay.
And then
well, that's your passion. You love that stuff. You can see that was probably not so bad.
And it was fun. It was good. But then the Memphis, or Prowlers of the Deep, ran the submarine aground off the coast of Florida, remember?
Yeah, that was before we got there.
I got short-cycled out of sub school.
Shut up.
And
so
got sent. I went down and relieved the assistant navigator that got fired on the Memphis.
Holy, was that a cool thing to happen to you?
No, it sucked because the crew was, it was cool to be picked to, hey, get the phone call from the detailer, Master Chief Shadow, saying, hey, I need you to go do, I need you. I'm not one to whine. I didn't go, me, no, I don't want to go. I did. I jumped right on it. Next thing I knew, I'm on a plane to Portugal to pick up the boat. So what happened to Memphis was she ran aground.
I thought it ran aground in Florida.
It did. So they were doing ops off the coast of Florida. They had a breakdown in communication, which is always, if things are going to fail, it fails because communication, right? And they basically parked the boat on the beach off Hollywood, Florida.
Why was it in Portugal then?
Well, bear with me here. So in order to effect repairs to the rudder and the screw and the stern planes and some of the underbelly of the boat, once they got it off the sandbar, they ordered her up the coast to Kings Bay, and she pulled into Kings Bay, surface transit, I think, up to Kings Bay, and went into the dry dock in Kings Bay where they effected the repairs. And then instead of letting them go home, back up to Norfolk, they sent them to the Med.
Shut up. Yeah. It went to the Med after that?
Right. And there was a guy on the boat that had relieved the ANAV that had been fired, taking the captain's mast on, fired off the boat. Al Kemery by name, and Al at the time was on the Albany, which was in PCU Albany, it was pre-com unit Albany in the shipyard. So Al Kemery took over as the initial ANAV on Memphis until I got there. So I had to get checked out of sub school. The boat was fixed, and they sent her over to the Med in one of her first stops, and the Med was pulling into Lisbon. And I flew over to Lisbon, and there began the story of our time on Memphis together.
So hold on a second, because I got to Memphis right when it was coming out of the shipyard in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Right.
How long was it there for then?
20, yeah, well, okay, so it was there longer than it was supposed to be because it had a particular maintenance problem in the engine room that didn't get done right, and that held us up coming out of the yards. And it ended up being the bane of their existence long after it came out of the shipyard because they had to put it in EB, I don't know if you remember that, to fix some of the stuff back in the engine room that wasn't right, which I can't mention. So it was in the shipyard for 28 months, I think.
Damn.
And Kathy and the kids had moved up to Kittery. You know, by that time we had the three. We had Annabelle, David, and Cameron. And that was a good 28 months. I loved Kittery, you know, which is part of the reason why we moved back to New Hampshire, you know. So we had such a very beautiful.
I was only up there for like 10 days. I got there right before the ship was pulling out and heading back to
Groton.
Yeah. So I checked into Groton first, and then they took me up to. They're like, "Yeah, there's no sense taking all your shit up there because you're gonna be back down here in a couple of weeks." So I show up, and everybody is exhausted, stressed, freaked out,
sea trials,
getting ready for sea trials. And this is my first boat, and I'm like, "Hey, man, why is everyone so crazy? Like, this sounds like it's gonna be pretty cool, right?" And people are like, "Shut the fuck up, kid. You have no idea what you're talking about. This is gonna suck." I guys like Billy Coons that are coming up. Like, hey, he's like the guy in Airplane, you know, he's the pilot in Airplane, like, hey, Do you like movies about gladiators? You know, say, yeah. Yeah.
Billy Coons, he went on to be a
commander,
I think.
Yeah, of course.
He was an IC-man, I think.
Half those guys, yeah, he was an IC-man. But like, there was a lot of those guys that we served with all went off and took commissions. I mean, like most of the guys that I trucked with, like Ryan Ogden, he's a captain, I think now.
Yeah, I guess God love him. I just stayed the course, keeping the goat locker together,
but that was definitely your thing. I mean, you were really good at that shit. When I showed up, I mean, even then, you saw other chiefs that were like, "Hey, man, what do you think I got to do here?" Right? So, I didn't realize that you had been on the Memphis the whole time.
Yeah, I was on Memphis through the entire overhaul.
Once we took it to sea, because you were, you didn't go on the first deployment with us, so you left.
I got off the boat and went to shore duty again for my second tour.
How long were you on shore duty before you got called into Memphis?
It wasn't even 2 years.
Oh shit! Okay, but you'd been there for enough time.
About a year and a half or more, maybe 8. A little over a year and a half, and then the call came. Hey, I need you to go to the Memphis.
Okay,
so,
and then from the Memphis, you went to shore duty again.
I did. I went to Group 2,
and that's
Commander Submarine Group 2 in Groton.
Okay,
and I was basically the senior operations officer for my navigator, the actual operations officer. I was on the enlisted side. Paul Jerzak was the operations officer. Mike Gilmore was the communicator.
What's Group 2? It's like a squadron of submarines?
Well, it had purview over the boats in Groton and the submarines down in some of the boats in Norfolk.
Really?
Yeah, right. And we would do like the local area submarine movement notes and the sub notes and stuff. And it was pretty laid back duty. I mean, it wasn't very stressful at all. Yeah, and there was
how long was that?
Well, it was 2 years. So the rest of the story there is there was a master chief serving at Group 2 that was the staff command master chief, and he ended up getting out.
Were you a senior chief now?
I was a senior chief at the time. So Joe Clow was the master chief for Admiral.
Where did you make senior
Admiral
chief?
Buchanan or Admiral Fages?
Where did you make senior at?
On the Memphis.
I think I remember senior. So
I volunteered to take over the staff command master chief duty, which really it's a figurehead. But it still had to make the staff schedule. I had I worked basically right directly for the chief of staff, Wayne Peters, Captain Peters, and I had two admirals. I had Admiral Mel Fages and I had Admiral Bruce Paget, both wonderful men, leaders in their own right. But so then the call came from the detailer. It says, "Hey, I need you to rotate. I want to send you to be chief of the boat on the USS Albuquerque."
Hell yeah.
Right? And that was my chance. And I had just...
Albuquerque's out of New London too, right? Or Groton?
Yeah. Albuquerque was out of New London. But she was getting ready to go to the yards, getting ready to go into overhaul.
Oof.
So I finished up my chief of the boat qualifications and went to the Senior Enlisted Academy up in Newport.
How long was that?
I want to say that one was like 12 weeks. And it was
cool?
October to December.
What do you learn?
It was wonderful. Some of the folks at the Senior Enlisted Academy were the very best of the best. They were kind of like the Top Guns of submarine.
Sure.
So
no, I think
so it's in Newport. It's a challenge. I mean, it's teaching leaders leadership. But it's to the next level.
Sure.
What
do you I mean, is it just
and the curriculum was worth, I don't know how many college credits. It was like worth a semester of credits, but you learn the pillars of leadership. You learn mentorship. You don't learn. What you do is you hone your skills as a leader, right? And you study history, naval history, and how the best during periods of war, Vietnam, World War II, Korea, you learn how the leaders led their troops. And you hear some really inspirational, gut-wrenching stories. And you're given a mission. Basically, your mission is to take this crew and turn them into the best that they can be. And how are you going to do that?
But do they bring in like people that were like cobs that turned ships around, cruise around?
We had some inspirational speakers come in, and inspirational enough that I really don't remember who we heard.
Oh, but I mean,
but they were, it was a blur. I mean, it was 12 weeks of, and you talk about PT. Your team physical fitness is key, and we PT'd the living crap out of each other. We every other day in the field house doing these things called stations, where they had the PT station set up. So you would do inverted sit-ups, and then you'd do benches, and then you'd do crunches, and then you'd do the...
I didn't know senior NCOs did any of those things. I thought they were just in the goat locker.
It wasn't, no. And so, they put you through the paces of the physical fitness stuff.
Gotcha.
And you had to pass that in order to graduate.
Good.
But they have a big dining in at the end of the curriculum. You get all dressed in your, in this case,
little
mini medal dinner dress. And it was some of the best. I keep saying some of the best, but they really were. Rick West, McPon, was in our class.
No kidding?
Yeah, so Rick and I stay in touch. We went through the Senior Enlisted Academy together.
So is he Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy now? Or
no. He's been out for several years.
What do you do after that? That's like the tip of the tip of the spear.
That's the tip of the spear, and you're basically going to retire at the end of that.
And what do? You just go consult for companies about how to
I think he's bounced around as a consultant in some other jobs. Still inspirational leader. It was always fun when Rick would come to town, the McPon would come to town in Groton, and we'd have a chance to hook up.
So that people that are listening that don't...
at the Chiefs Corps, yeah.
The MCPON is shorthand for the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy.
Right.
That's the most senior enlisted person in the entire U.S. Navy.
Correct. 3 stars.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know those dudes get 3.
So the Master Chief McPon has 3 stars. All the other Master Chiefs have 2.
It's pretty gangsta, man. You guys get a 3rd star?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine that's, how do they even pick that? I mean, do the Master Chiefs vote on that together or some shit?
No, I think that's pretty much picked by the CNO. By
the Admiral.
Because the McPon and the CNO's office are right there together.
Well, that's what he is. He's like the Command Master Chief for the CNO, right?
Yeah, he's the Command Master Chief for the CNO. They traveled together. Rick was on the McPon, the McPon today.
Is that a cool job?
They travel all the time.
Is that a cool job?
Than home.
Do you think that's a good job to be the MCPON?
That is one of the most respected positions.
Oh,
and then you have the Master Sergeant of the Master Gunner, whoever in the Army, then the Air Force
he's got peers at every branch.
Theirs, and basically they're the Command Master Chiefs for.
They're like the enlisted Joint Chief of Staff, right?
Yeah, well, but they're the Chiefs, Master Chiefs, and Senior Enlisted for the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. I mean... it's
probably a pretty cool job, or is it like...
It's a very cool job.
No, like, let's be honest. Like, there are some jobs that are very we were talking about this last night, like being a CEO, there's jobs that are thankless as fuck, and there's a lot of jobs that suck. And, like, I always ask people, I'm like...
You have to punch a ticket, though. Yeah.
It's always worth it.
Some of them...
It's worth it, but it's going to be a grind.
You can't get to Nirvana without punching the ticket. You got to have that ticket. And,
some people don't do it.
And it goes back to you can't demand respect, right? That'll get you in trouble every time. But by the way you treat people and lead people, you earn their respect.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think this is really good, and it's really revealing, because think about me, right?
Do I have to think about you? Come on.
Well, it's your fault. Why I am you, my brothers, my dad. There's about a short list of people that I could blame. But my thing is, I am, we always grew up worrying about secondhand smoke, right? But I was the victim of secondhand leadership training, right? Mm-hmm. Meaning, like, I just am around people that were formerly trained, like you guys, to where I was getting really good cliff notes. So like I didn't have to read the book because you guys were going and fucking put in the pick and axe work, and then come back and then.
So did the light bulb ever go off? I mean, was there ever a aha moment where you went, now I get it?
Yes, I could tell you exactly when it was because I have the story with my kids. You want me to tell you what it was?
Yeah.
Sadly, I enjoyed being a sailor. I enjoyed the privileges that came with being a junior sailor. And what I mean like the lack of any expectations of me to be good at anything, right? And that's there's a serious conversation. Go ahead.
You didn't know, but you did have some expectations.
But I didn't know that, right? So, but I mean, I had, when you get to the fleet type of thing, all you want to do is go earn your warfare pin and do something special and stand some watches and do some shit. And I'll tell you, the military does an amazing job of taking, 40,000 people a month and just training them to be ready to where in a short amount of time, they are significant and can bring value to a command. And it doesn't matter what branch or what your RAID or MOS or NEC or EIAO is. They just do a good job of stopping and peeling everybody down to, a common denominator. And then they build them up and then send them back out and say, now you're able to go learn. And I was that, right? And I end up getting the fleet. And then I was able to really quickly figure out which people were not going to invest a second into watching me grow and develop. And those that were yelling at me for a good reason, right?
They weren't yelling. They were emphasizing.
I think you forget how many times I got brought back.
Well, you brought it upon yourself.
I was the victim of bad leadership.
Let's go back to you just don't punch somebody in the side of the head just for shits and grins.
I didn't know that. I wasn't trained that. So I
can tell by your ears. Come on.
Well, I remember going to, I don't know what I did, and I know I have no doubt I deserved it. And I wasn't really in a captain's mass, but I was standing in the wardroom in front of the captain and everyone that wore khakis on that ship.
I remember this.
Oh, yeah. And I remember at the time, I was always ranked pretty fairly high, for the things that I did. I was a dig it, so to speak. Like I was doing all my shit to E9 when I was an E4. Like I was just trying to always be in the game. And I remember looking around and thinking like, why am I getting yelled at, man? I'm better than most of these other sailors. And I remember that the captain one day goes, so that's your fucking problem. He goes, yeah, you think that you're competing against other people. And what you failed is you're just really competing against yourself and you're losing every day.
Is that Claude that said that to you?
Aaron.
Captain Byrne?
And what would have been cooler, I think, at that time, because you also, you hit me in the gut before I walked in there, then he fucking delivered it and I walked out crushed and then you gave me the last blow and I was like, why didn't those sons of bitches just take my rank and some money away? I'm happy to give up a little bit of liberty. I'd rather not hear how horrible, like how disappointed you guys were in me. And that changed me, right? I was like, I'll never compete against anybody ever again for the rest of my life.
Somebody had to give you that hug.
It was you guys. Yeah. It was you. It was Barron. And I remember vividly looking at Wood and he could give two shits about me. He was a chief, not a bad guy, just not a chief that was the type of chief that I needed. And I remember thinking, I'm like, you know what, I needed it because I'm not going to say I didn't give a shit what the captain thought, but the captain didn't really care about me. Like his job was the mission in the ship. Your job was the crew, and I was the crew.
At what point did you realize the captain was telling you what we told the captain to tell you?
Yeah, I never realized that till now. That's how stupid I am. Can we I think you need to lower your bar about it.
He took us under his counsel a lot.
Okay, because he didn't know what to do, I guess. So he's like,
it's not that he didn't know what to do. He's a commanding officer, and he's a very smart man. But
he's not used to dealing with these enlisted chumps.
But he wanted our valued opinion. And opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, right?
Sure.
But he wanted our recommendation.
That sucked. That was the worst.
And it was hard to give some recommendations that says, hey, Captain, give them to us. Let us bring them back to life, resuscitate them.
That was hard.
But I want a lesson to be taught to him because he's not going to get it unless he hears some harsh words. And I think that's what you got.
Yeah. I remember vividly, you got to remember, right? You can't.
My beer's getting warm. I can't have that.
Yeah, dude, that's a sin. To be on a boat like the Memphis and to be able to function, I would like to think that I'd only been on a boat. You've been on 7. So I don't know how the Memphis ranked in terms of our tempo, but I felt like we did it. I did a lot.
You did.
And
you did.
I had amazing times. I multiple deployments, got to do all kinds of cool shit. And I remember part of the reason, people are like, look, if you're going to try to re-enlist or stay, this is as good as it gets. It's just, you don't think you're going to get more of this, right. Are you? Right.
So this was your aha moment. captain's mast, if you want to call it that. And then for people listening, a captain's mast is basically where you put a green tablecloth on the wardroom table. Wardroom is where the captain resides and hangs out. And that green tablecloth is a symbol of a legal
judge, jury, and executioner.
Right. So under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the commanding officer can carry out non-judicial punishment, which is what
put me in the brig with bread and water,
which is what you received. Not bread and water, but you received a pretty good ass chewing.
That was
right.
That was a pretty prolific.
But it wasn't. It
was what I needed.
It wasn't loud and vociferous. It was pointed. And there were some pointed barbs that we wanted to get across to you that said, hey, listen, young man, you need to take your head out of your ass and come along, right? So
I would like to think, like, you kind of had to be a little cocky and a little arrogant, especially on a boat like that where everyone was punching each other in the face sometimes, but like, I definitely needed to be humbled. That humbled the shit out of me. And to this day, like when I sit down and talk to my kids, I always remind them, like, you're not competing against anybody else. You're only competing against yourself. And that's where I learned that. And that was obviously from you guys. And then the other time was, there was another interesting time where you chewed me up and spit me out, but then build me back up to make sure that I wasn't broken and that I would find some, you guys had a good touch, right? And I got hit twice.
Our intentions were not to destroy.
Were you the son of a bitch that had me failed on my board too, or was that my own doing?
Your submarine qualification warfare?
When I did my first board, I was ready for my board at like month 6, remember?
Yeah.
And
you were a quick learner. You screamed through that qual card.
And I failed my board. And you have to remember, right? These are all these guys that I admire and respect. You're all my heroes.
I failed my first qualification board.
Well,
I failed my first quartermaster of the watch board. Seaborn McCrory failed me.
But there's reasons why, like I didn't know until later when they're like, yeah, Kirk, we just needed you to slow the fuck down and appreciate, the worst thing they could have done is let me have my fish faster to where I would have been probably even more cavalier than I was at the time. And that's the last thing I needed.
Well, so that's something that's not taken lightly, right? That warfare.
Humbling people.
Yeah, that warfare pin is earned, and there's a reason for it. If I can save your life, you damn well better be able to save my life.
Yeah,
and you've got to know that ship.
And when you get to the ship, that's for people that don't know, when you get to a submarine, like they put a gun to your head. And they're like, if you don't earn your warfare pin, what do you have? 12 months, 9 months, whatever it was, then the worst thing imaginable is going to happen to you, and that is where we ship you out to the surface fleet.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the last thing I want.
Last thing you want.
So I was like, I will study everything. I had RPMs out all the time. I cranked for I think I cranked 2 days.
Well, that's part of the reason why you probably failed your board, because you had a reactor plant manual RPM out all the time. It's not an RPM. I
had to stand
you had
everything.
the SSMs out. You had the ship service manuals out learning.
Were you there when I qualified chief of the watch as an E4?
Terrifying.
But I did.
You did.
But I only did it because an FT used to fuck with me, and he was E6. And I knew if I stood chief of the watch that I could have a senior watch over him, and it was the only way that I could tell him what to go do after the watch.
Did you ever stand the watch?
I did. No. Actually, if you ask
I don't remember that.
So you were off the boat by then, but Mason was telling me last night, he goes, yeah, like the captain let me do that. And then he one day was like, have you ever thought about dive? And I said, would you let me do that? I mean, obviously I didn't qualify dive, but I did try. I stood some under instruction watches. But Mason he's like, yeah, I remember that.
Well, yeah, I mean, as much as we have a bad habit of eating our young and spitting them out like rocks from time to time, we really shouldn't do that.
No, it's actually pressure testing is what's necessary.
Yeah, but
I felt like you guys were pressure testing me and trying to condition me to emotionally be able to handle the magnitude of stress and pressure I'd be under based on the duties and responsibilities.
Well, that's the thing, duties and responsibilities. And you're responsible for the safety of that crew, no matter what, no matter how you can't think of it any other way. Once you get your dolphins, once you get your warfare pin, hey, you're the fish schnizzle. I mean, you're it, right? And you have to be able to apply that knowledge on those submarine systems to make the whole thing work, right? So the importance that's placed on any warfare pin is to make sure you know what the frick you're doing.
Well, it should be special.
And let's not hurt anybody doing it.
It should be hard. The struggle should be real to get it. You have to callous your brain and know a lot of stuff. And the crew has to trust you, right? And they have to respect you.
Yeah. So those couple aha moments that you had,
I had two big ones.
Still with all that and the training and leadership that you had, you still decided to get out of the Navy.
So it was under the advice of a chief. You know, when I was going to get in, there was a coaching and guidance that they gave me, and they're like, "What's your intent? What's your long-term objective?" And when I explained it, they're like, "Then this is what you're going to do." And I did everything they told me to do to the T, and I got out and did exactly what they told me to do after that.
You know, this is so. I've been looking forward to this conversation because you're. I know, right? You're the way you had those years on the boat, and I think you're probably on the boat, what, 3 years?
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. I guess when I left the boat, I was hoping you were going to stay in because I had invested a lot in you, and I thought you would have stayed the course and stayed Navy. Thankfully, things have worked out to where, holy crap, look at you now, right? You're the CEO of Overwatch. You're have built a team of professionals and former veterans that's impressive, Kirk, and that you can't deny that. Yeah, probably some of our tutelage of you along the way helped, but when you say, "Hey, what I got started out here, you got to come out and see it. It's all because of you," I can tell you, no, it's not. It's because of you. You had in that brain of yours. I think you knew all along at some point what you wanted.
I think that I didn't really know what I wanted till I had cancer, but I know that I was learning really quickly what I didn't want. Sure. And for me, I loved being in the Navy. I did not get out because I didn't like it.
Were you active duty when you were diagnosed with cancer?
No. I actually was getting ready to go back in with a commission because by then I had graduated college. Yeah. And I was like, "Hey, man."
For some reason, I thought you got medically discharged. I don't know why I had that in my brain.
But I was going to go back in. After I graduated college, I started reaching out to the ROTC guys and the OCS guys, and I was looking for sponsors. And
sure.
I thought I'd have a good run at it, but I wasn't 100% positive that that's what I needed. I just thought that was what I wanted. And really what I learned is I just missed the culture that I had. And I spent my entire career as a civilian trying to recapture what I had on the Memphis.
Capture lightning in a bottle again?
Yeah. And I realized that was never going to happen. And every few years I think that I learned a lot of shit that was really valuable and really important to me in the military. I think that I had an advantage in the military over most of my peers because I was born and raised in a home by a guy that was once former enlisted and then became an officer, right? He got a bachelor's from Boise State, master's from OU in the military. He was a big believer that Uncle Sam should pay for all of our colleges, so he was very, intentional in how he was, let me manage your expectations. If you think you're going to be enlightened because I'm going to pay for you to go fuck off for 4 years of college, you are out of your mind, right? He's like, this is what your options are. But he had taught me things that when I showed up to basic or when I showed up the military, for the first time, some people were listening to things, and I've been listening to that every weekend, type of thing. So I acclimated easily, and that was an advantage. When I was at the Memphis, there are guys like you, and there were guys like Lieutenant Ward who I did not like and did not want to talk to, but I had unequivocal respect for. The thing
that was a funny conversation last night.
Well, listen, you guys were all assassins, right? And you guys are imagine I'm at this boat and like I'm in sub school or whatever, and they're like, they're ranking you and like you get the pick, and all the instructors that know the fleet are like, dude, if you could get on this boat, that's a powerhouse boat. That's where you want to be. So
hot runner.
So I'm sitting there hoping that the guys ahead of me are like married and want to go to Pearl Harbor or something. I end up getting the boat, and I'm around all these. I think there was a lot of talent. There was a lot of talent on that boat. It did not lack genius, right? So I was like, I'm around all these amazing people. There were some that were pieces of shit, but the most of them were really great. And it was just my job to figure out which ones were which and absorb what I could and deflect the others. So, you know, I have this incubator of knowledge that comes from you and the Lieutenant Wards and the Scott Graffs and, you know, the Eric Reeses. I mean, there's a lot of guys that had a profound impact on me.
That's good.
And
as we should.
Well, I mean, you guys are senior NCOs or, you know, JMOs, and that's your job, right? Is to help people like me that have no idea. And I remember later on, I get out of the military and I'm kind of wandering around, and I had at least a skill set to fall back onto using my hands, or, you know, that you have all these guys that are pouring things into my ear hole all the time that are actually over the course of time taking root. And I think by the time that I had cancer, everything shifted to top dead center, and I was able to fall back again on the things that I really defaulted and learned either from this, you know, the home I grew up in, the wrestling rooms I trained in, you know, the crew I served with. And I remember my dad being he's a little bit worried, as, you know, your father would be. And I was like, Dad, I feel like I've been training for this my whole life. You know, like, I'm good. I got this. I'm going to figure out what's up.
And you beat it.
Well, but at the time, you know, you're just living with your expectations are, I want to be here in 2 years from now. How do I guarantee that I'm here in 2 years from now? And my whole life mindset shifted to that. Wow. So when that happens, everything else is compressed. My poor kids, right? Because now my level of intent with them is much more amplified. So they have to kind of endure more. Because I'm like, look, you're going to get it all in the next 2 years, just in case. But then, you know, you back off and you throttle those things. You over-rotate, it's called, right? But again, everything that I did, I would just go back, like you said, into my toolbox. And I'd be like, okay, I remember when, you know, Chief Lee was telling me, you know, use this, but if it doesn't work, then use the hammer, right? You know, because you were always, like, you guys were very assertive guys. Like, I only knew Mason Ward because when we'd have, you know, trees and horses or whatever, and we were getting ready to be inspected, there was a watch bill that was those guys. And I always stood watch with him because he was I'm not going to say we had great officers. In my humble opinion, he was the best submarine officer we had on that ship. And
there was a couple,
But I mean, like, if he was driving the ship, like if shit was going down, everyone's like, dude, I hope that this guy are at the con, right?
Right.
And he was one of them, but he was former enlisted, and he had a very high standard for everybody. And if you've had any daylight between him and that standard, you would feel it with whatever he would bring at you, because he could pull it. He was smarter than
I loved Mason, Lieutenant Ward.
He was an ass. He's awesome now.
But when he stood officer of the deck, he drove the ship.
He was,
and he did it really well.
He was fantastic.
And, you know, remember, I stood navigation supervisor, right? So I was in that control room, and we were, I think, myself and the other navigation supervisor, Oscar Gangsis, the nav.
Gangsis, I remember that guy.
And I think we were doing 9-hour shifts.
Service transit unit.
Yeah. Well, we were just even underway because we went into that port and starboard battle stations bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, we're half the crew on, half the crew off.
That was crazy.
So, but when Mason was officer of the deck,
you just knew that
you knew we were in good hands.
There was a few of them that had their shit on lockdown, right? And I remember not wanting to stand watch them because I knew that I knew that when I was off watch, the ship was okay, you know. But he was very intense, right? And I was stunned that he even knew my first name. I ran into him here in Austin, Texas,
at a sushi bar,
at a sushi restaurant, and he's like, someone's like, Kirk, and then, you know, someone's like, oh, Phil, and I turn around, I'm like, it's almost like, is that Lieutenant Dan?
Yeah, Lieutenant Dan.
No,
but so
I was surprised.
You know,
you had good officers.
You were fortunate, and I was fortunate to be honest.
What was it about you that decided to invest in me?
I saw something in you. I know that sounds colloquial and sounds like a line of horseshit, but it's true. I mean, when after talking to you and hearing your background, we had some common ground. We both wrestled. You know, we both like sports.
Sure.
I knew Eric liked you. Eric Reese liked you, and I knew you mingled well with the other guys, Dave Brooks and who else? Johnson, and yeah, you had the ability to meld into different groups. And you were a nice, good young sailor. You were so. I saw in you probably a little bit of what I saw in myself when I was coming up through the ranks. I saw that you had the desire, and you had the yearning to want to. I can remember when you said, "Hey, I want to be in your division. And I want you to teach me navigation." So
I just wanted. I liked how hard those teams were working, and I wanted to work hard. Like that's the only thing I knew how to do was work hard.
There were some redeeming qualities in you, still are to this day. So let me go back. I said I was on 7 submarines, and as you were talking, I was thinking, is it really 7? And I think it is 7. So James Monroe, Chicago, Rickover. Then I did, Memphis was up here, up in the yards. I did some underways on Baton Rouge and the USS Boston. So there's 1, 2, 3.
So 2 other 688s.
Yeah, 2 other 688s, and then finally ended up on the Albuquerque. And that command tour, the Command Master Chief tour, was special. And it's good to be king. I say that all the time. But
did you pair well with the commanding officer? Did you already know him?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't know him. When I got to the boat, Jerry Burroughs, Admiral Burroughs, was the commanding officer, and he was just a delightful sweetheart of a man, but a good commanding officer, and he could bring the lumber if he needed to, right? And then Stuart Munch relieved him. Kind of a funny story, and Admiral Munch, forgive me for telling this story, but when the Admiral Commander Munch showed up, I had to go pick him up at the BOQ. We were in the yards. And I took the ship's van down, picked him up, and I knew something was not exactly right.
He wasn't happy.
But he was happy. He was just, I was looking at him, I'm like, something's missing. What's going on? Couldn't put my finger on, but I said, maybe it's just he's the new captain and a new glow and something different, And so remember, this is after 9/11, and we had to get back into the shipyard down on the controlled industrial area, the CIA. We had to go through an inspection tent where you had to open the engine compartment and all the doors, and they ran the mirrors under the truck. This sniffer dogs came by, whatever. And one of the security guards, who was former Navy enlisted, came over to me. His name was Cam. And he came over and he goes, "Do you notice anything different about your captain?" I'm thinking, "Yeah, I did. What's going on?" He goes, "He doesn't have any collar devices on." He'd forgotten his collar device.
That's what it was.
So I got back in the van, shut things up, got in the van. I said, "Captain, I got to take you back to your barracks room." "Oh, why? What's wrong?" I said, "You forgot your collar device." And the look on his face was priceless. But another wonderful gentleman. I enjoyed my time on Albuquerque with him as the commanding officer more so than any submarine I've ever been on.
What that guy, did he turn out to go be an admiral too, or
who? Munch? Yeah,
your CO.
Admiral Munch. Yeah.
Okay, still in or?
Oh yeah, okay. He's the one that's sink us nav. You're basically.
Is that a 3-star?
Yeah, 3. He's basically the commander chief.
Don't look at me like I'm an idiot because I don't hang out with 3 stars and 4 stars. No, that's only big time Master Chief shit, man.
Dude.
Eat nothings. We can fetch coffee for them.
I have failed.
Thank you. Now we're finally getting somewhere.